If you enjoy this content, please take a moment to rate and review it. Your feedback will greatly impact our ability to reach more people. Thank you.
Everyone, welcome to Health Further. I have a great guest, Ben Lytle, today. Ben, we're going to talk through several topics. It's a fun time, kind of a chaotic time in the world today. Happy to have you on Health Further. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Ben, you have launched, several companies, seven, I think, that are large enough to be sort of documented. And then you've written 3 different books around sort of how humans can work with AI. Maybe give the audience that may not know your background, sort of how you got started in healthcare, and maybe just a quick summary, and then I'm sure we'll talk through lots of it.
Sure. Yeah, because my career is kind of parallel, intertwined 3 major themes. One is information technology, and the other is human development and human potential, which really shaped my management leadership style, but also affected how I look at entrepreneurial opportunities. And then healthcare. And so those things really are my story. I began in IT at 16 and worked my way through undergraduate school, doing working nights in IT, raising a family, and then went on to just get promoted through a series of companies. I worked at a big finance company for 5 years, a bank for a couple of years, and then landed at Blue Cross of Indiana. And from there rose up and became CIO of what was a quite large IT organization, about 400 people. And from there got promoted into, and I learned quite a bit about healthcare from that seat, but learned a lot more because I got promoted to chief operating officer. Oh, and while I was in those years when I was working for Blue Cross, I got my law degree at night at Indiana University. So
especially in healthcare, there's so much regulation. That was probably really valuable as you progressed.
It actually, without it, I don't think I would have ever gotten the idea of how to create Anthem. So it literally was that important. And so I got the law degree in 4 years, and thankfully have never had to go back to school at night again. After 8 years there. And so became chief operating officer, was chief operating officer for 5 years, and then the CEO.
And at that point, just to be clear, it was still Blue Cross of Indiana.
Right. It was Blue Cross of Indiana, only doing business in Indiana and only just doing health insurance. And my then boss and CEO recommended to the board, asked the board to actually slate me permanently 2 years in advance to be his successor, so that he and I could start working in partnership for that transition. Worked great, and I used that 2 years to come up with a strategic plan to both diversify the company, because at that point it was being threatened by what was then called Hillary Care, but it was a health reform plan that would have eliminated health plans, at least so they threatened. And at the same time, to expand Blue Cross outside of the state of Indiana through mergers and with other Blue Cross companies. And I thought one or the other would work, and they both worked.
So maybe we talked about it in the sort of planning code, but talk about your leadership philosophy as you were taking that first CEO role. I know you have a really interesting sort of perspective on helping others grow and building their organization. So maybe talk about how you approached that.
Yeah, when I was 20 years old, I had this, one of these fantastic life-changing moments where I took an elective course in the summer, and it was called Introduction to Personality. And this charismatic young professor said to us, there's only about 15 of us in the class, and he said, you don't have to be anything that anybody wants you to be or expects you to be. Who you are is inside to be discovered and lived. That's your potential, and it's your job to find it and live it out. And it, that was like, wow, I'd never had anybody explain life so succinctly and clearly.
And
so
incredible at 20 to get that insight and almost empowerment that you can be whatever you want.
And so literally I changed my degree. I just glommed on to everything this guy could pass on to me about human development. And I've spent the rest of my life learning about human development and the relationship between your potential and wisdom, which are interrelated, and how wisdom, or making the best possible decisions throughout your life, is really what defines you. And so that really has guided me, and it has shaped my leadership and management style, because I felt like my job was to help people see the potential in themselves they couldn't yet see. And that's a very different way. And once people know that that's what you're trying to do, it completely changes your relationship as a leader.
Yeah, it's much more optimistic. Yeah, it's much more optimistic and kind of empowering them to do great things.
Yeah, exactly. And so we had a fantastic team of people. I mean, no CEO builds a company, teams build companies. And we had this fantastic team that built 2 New York Stock Exchange companies in parallel over 11 years, and both of them were wildly successful.
Yeah, so talk about that. I mean, Blue Cross of Indiana, it was a large Blues plan, but a single state and a mutual business, which we can talk about because that might be important. And then you built 2 publicly traded, very large businesses, nationwide businesses out of that. Maybe talk through how that planning process evolved, what you saw at that point, and how you put it together.
Yeah, so I'll talk about the diversified company Accordia first. We didn't have a lot of them. I mean, we weren't a broke company. We had we had about $300 million in the equivalent of shareholders' equity, if that would have been a public company. But we didn't, a lot of that had to be held in very conservative reserves. And so we didn't have a lot of things to go speculating on. And I had learned, having worked for other diversified companies, that you do best when you stay close to what you know. And also, if you can, put a limited amount of money in and test it. And that's what we did. So we found, my study of the insurance industry said the business with the lowest capital requirements and the highest margins coming out of it, would throw off the most cash, was, so it could grow on its own, was the insurance brokerage business. And it's still a very good business.
Yeah.
So I went into it. Anthem put $35 million into it. And we built strictly off the cash flow of the company after that, and sold it.
And started in Indiana with large employers?
Yeah, we actually bought an Erie, Pennsylvania-based broker, and a great management team, and they were really our brains to build that out. And we did that over a period of about 6 or 7 years, and then sold it for a nice price at the end. Anthem got a fabulous return, because once the Hillary Care risk went away. And then in parallel with that, I discovered that we were a mutual insurance company. Most people in the company thought it was a not-for-profit, and it wasn't. It was a mutual insurance company, and found out there were 14 in total, 14 Blue Cross mutual insurance companies. Well, the fascinating thing about merging mutuals is no money changes hands.
Yeah, you're not allowed to change.
You're not allowed to. Yeah, it is to be a vote of the membership to come together, and nobody can get paid for it. And so that has
just Ben, so I can understand, a mutual, who are the members? Is it the actual subscribers, or is it more like when you think of shareholders? Who are the members?
No, they are the policy holders, except that they have to be policy holders, and it varies some by state, but that actually have a risk-bearing contract. Like, we couldn't do administrative services only contracts in Indiana. Those didn't count as members, but other states have slight variations off that.
Okay. And so you had to do a merger and then convince your customers, basically, that this merger was a good idea, and they literally voted for it.
Yeah, and it was a good idea, because we ended up merging 4 mutuals, started with Kentucky, then Ohio, and then Connecticut. And those, when we demutualized, when we demutualized, those people got checks for their ownership, or they could choose stock or a mix of both. And it was amazing because a lot of them couldn't quite understand how they were because they didn't understand a mutual insurance company. I actually owned the company. So they got cash and got to keep their insurance. And it was cute because a lot of the people who ended up owning Anthem in Indiana and a couple of the other states were Medicare supplement members who had been long-term members, usually and very often a husband and wife or a wife, and they would a couple, and they would both have policies, and they were contributing all those years. And because you invest that money particularly carefully, because that's the elderly, they built a lot of the reserves of the net worth of the company, and so we were writing checks for $70,000.
Really
an elderly
changes
couple.
Changes their retirement.
They thought it was fantastic.
Right,
I remember them trying to come give their checks back because they thought we were canceling their Blue Cross.
Right.
You get to keep it.
Okay,
so it was a very fun time.
So you merged several states together, four different states, and then took it public on the New York Exchange.
There was another step in there. Several years in there, we acquired several not-for-profit Blue Crosses that were struggling at that time financially, and so we bought Maine, New Hampshire, Colorado, and Nevada. And that expanded us to other states as well. And those have been great states for us.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. And so that was the really a huge series of wins that kind of launched your career. But that you were just kind of warming up. I want to move to, because it's really an innovation podcast, although that was very innovative as well at the time. I want to talk about SilverSneakers because chronic disease is a really hard issue to get our hands around. Our system is designed for treating a broken leg or a car accident, not really for treating long-term chronic care where you need to pull the patient in and help them change their lifestyle, change their decision-making. So talk about what you saw in SilverSneakers. I know you and your son acquired kind of a startup, a high growth, but pretty small business. What did you see at the time? And then how did you grow it into what it became, which is, a huge thing to help seniors?
Well, it was a shock to everyone when at 52, I said, I'm going to leave Anthem and everything I've built here to go into business with my son and move to Arizona. But it was really
this little thing helping seniors work out, or I hope it was characterized then.
Well, and it was multiple things. I wanted to work with my son. He and I had been talking about that since he was 18, 19 years old. And but I also wanted to achieve peak fitness for myself and maintain it. And it's, when you're running a big public company, you don't have a lot of life left to do stuff like that. I wanted to really I already had one grandchild. I knew that I had others coming. I wanted to know them and them to know me, not some guy they saw 2 or 3 times a year. So they literally have grown up on my property here, and now they're all through college, So those were all really important to me. But on the business side, so my son and I really sat down and said, what is it we want to do in healthcare that we're really interested in? And one was prevention and fitness and wellness. We just felt like we were, and this was, early 2000s. So it wasn't
you're ahead of the curve on that. That was not like a trendy thing to talk about.
No, it was not. And the other was chronic disease. We both, at Anthem, one of the first things I learned running Anthem was the dramatic division in usage and utilization and cost. That roughly 5% of the population or 50% of the cost. And in any given year, 80% of the population only need primary care. And so you have this wild division. So anyway, I really got interested in chronic disease. He did as well. He worked at a PBM and saw some of the same kind of things and how they had huge numbers of medicines to manage. And so anyway, we started down a path and we saw that they could actually merge. that we could focus prevention and wellness on chronic disease. And so we started looking around spaces, and we found some, and we had a private equity company, that two of them, that backed us, and they thought there was real promise here and believed in us as a team. And so we made 5 acquisitions in 2 years and integrated them. And 2 of the standouts, one was a smoking cessation company done online. At that time, revolutionary, had huge success and still out there doing well. And the other was with this wellness company, that senior fitness company, and that had one product called SilverSneakers, and a brilliant lady named Mary Swanson had invented it because her dad had been a great athlete, and when he had heart trouble, and there was basically nowhere for him to work out. You know, he didn't feel very welcome with the guys in the tats and
right.
So we thought, but they had invented a very clever program that used the midday when the fitness center wasn't busy, and to create these classes. And it was just a wonderful idea. So we bought that, and we were able, because of some of our healthcare connections and really putting the drive in behind having more than just one solution, because we had a lot of seniors that were also smokers. That the thing just took off and exploded, and today it's I think it's certainly one of the largest health fitness programs in the United States, if not the largest. And average age is 78 years old. And that's just, if you don't have anything to do one day, go down to your local fitness center and say, do you guys offer SilverSneakers? I'd like to sit in. And you will be absolutely amazed what a beautiful program it is, because it really does bring together ending isolation, building community. It's got all of the things, relationships, everything we need to age well. So anyway,
that was the thing that I think, starting with it at the brand level, starting with the name of it, and the fellowship and the community. It is chronic disease management, but it's positioned, and it's a fun, community building, life-giving kind of experience. It's not, chronic disease management doesn't sound that fun, right? But I'm joining
SilverSneakers
is a lot.
Yeah, going to have a good time does.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's primarily sold through Medicare Advantage plans. They offer that as one of their free programs. There have been other clones developed, but I don't think any of the others are near as successful. So.
Right. Yeah. So I want to shift a little. For your entire career, I've really focused on being a futurist and thinking about the future in a very disciplined and kind of organized way. Maybe talk about the practice that you go through of even what futurism is, and then I want to transition to how you see the market today, and maybe help us. There's a lot of changes going on. So can we use some of your insight and your futurism as we think about innovation going forward? And then, of course, I want to talk about AI and healthcare in general. So what is futurism, or how do you think about the role of the futurist?
So my interest started really young, and I loved science fiction when I was really starting as a little kid, and read it. And then along the way, I discovered futurists. And futurists, instead of using fiction to predict and describe the future, they use more analytics and research and convergence of trends. One of the things that I discovered that not all futurists identified pretty early on was that it's convergence that drives these things. So it's, people will think, well, it's AI, or they'll think it's technology. No, it's usually multiple forces that are converging at a single point in time. And there's always a technology aspect to it that's the change agent, and boom, it takes off. It accelerates change, solves big problems, creates new ones, but that's what it does. And so then I began to really, I began to study the practice of futurism. And of course, it was a big part that made my career. Every time we were ahead of the curve in what we did. And that's what you want to do as a business. But the other thing that your audience might might enjoy. And I actually have a speech on this, and I think it's out on social media as well.
Okay.
Is one of the surprising things about studying the arc of history. So I spent a lot of time on what innovations have changed the world. Why does innovation change it? And what I discovered was that innovation, more than people doing good works, is what has changed and lifted society. That doesn't mean those things are unimportant. They're wildly important. But it does say the power of innovation to lift humanity. If you go back and think about the beginning, fire, and then the wheel, and then the printing
And then
press.
Ben, how do you define innovation? Like, so I would define it as sort of the application of a core technology for some purpose. Is that close to how you would define it, or how do you think about
I'd go
innovation?
more than technology. It's more, I think, the ability to see the convergence of multiple benefits to something. So for example, at the time the printing press came around, it was very much driven by two things. One was the church wanting to spread the message of the Bible at the time, and the other, though, was that as people began to assert their rights a little bit more and demand their rights a little bit more, they needed to be able to articulate those rights in more than just words. They needed to spread it. And, you know, these early writings around Gutenberg and his financial backers, who reputedly spent the equivalent of $1 billion today inventing that thing.
Yeah.
It took a long time.
And it took a long time to be monetized. I mean, like 100 years, 200 years to be monetized.
Yeah. So, but that's kind of, and so I'm always fascinated by the person who sees not just the technology or not just some applications, but what else is happening in the environment that's going to set this on fire.
Yeah.
That's it.
One of the things that I've been trying to think through is there are cycles in our life, right?
Yep.
And we all understand the daily cycle of the sun, but longer term cycles tied to demographics or technology curves, we have harder time recognizing. But if you study it as a futurist, you can see, the demographics are shifting, or this technology is good. You can predict how memory is going to be, how expensive or processing.
Absolutely.
You can't predict the day, but you can predict it pretty well over time. Is that close to the work?
One of the principles of both, remember I said these things intertwine. One of the principles of human development is a great way to identify patterns. And one of those principles is the principle of the microcosm and the microcosm. So what it really says in psychology is whatever goes on between my ears is also going on in the world and also going on in the universe. And reverse, if I spot something going on in the world, it's probably going on in between my ears. Yeah. And so once you realize that, you start to look at patterns very differently, because you say, well, okay, this happens in human nature. I mean, in society, it's probably going to happen inside me as well.
Almost like a fractal pattern. It's like a fractal pattern. It's happening in the individual. It's happening in a city. It's happening in the overall civilization.
Absolutely. And you start to look at world affairs very differently. You start to realize that these things have always a bigger cycle to them that's going on. And so that's one of the reasons today, I spend a lot of my time going around telling people, don't be afraid, because we've gone through times of great division before. I was a young man in the 60s. They were pretty ugly at times. And that's recent times. And also, when there's great division, it means something big is about to happen. And if we hold that tension,
a lot of change. There's a lot of change coming.
Exactly.
Okay, so from that perspective, I want to talk about your book series, and then also where you see the future of healthcare. Which is better to do first? How do you want to approach that?
We can start with the books, and then because it'll lead right into healthcare.
Okay.
But yeah, so the way they came about, I never in my entire life had an intention to write a book. I mean, I love to write, I love to speak and stuff, but I didn't have any intention. But every year I take a few days, a bit of a sabbatical around the first of the year, and I really ask myself, what am I missing? what could I be doing that would, take this body, this life, this mind, and use it for a good purpose, but was something would also make me happy. And I realized about 2010-ish time frame that my family, among others, starting with my young and large family, really didn't see what was coming. And I talked to other friends, very smart people, very well educated. Everybody's busy. Everybody's busy. And
we're all
nobody's
focused on this week or maybe this quarter, but we don't pick our head up and look even 5 years out. Yeah.
Right. And so because I'm a futurist and I follow a lot of trends of technologies and social thought, I said, boy, this is going to be big. This is going to be really big. And so I gave it a name, the new reality that we hadn't discovered yet. And I thought at the time I'd write a white paper for my family, which in our family is not that weird. So I started on it. Well, one white paper ended up to be 3, and they were about 3 inches thick. Yeah. And I said, okay, this.
And then your friends want to read it, and all of a sudden it's kind of a book.
So I thought, okay, well I'll do a self-published book only for a handful of people, my family and friends. And in the process, I hired an editor. The editor said, Mr. Lytle, this is good stuff because you're talking about something. There are a lot of good books on the future. Most of them, they don't get very many people read them because they're dense. You write in a style that's easy for people to understand. And he said, also, you're telling people, here's what you can do to adapt.
Yeah, right.
Because if you're talking to your family, they don't want to care.
You want to here's how you can have success in life. Here's how you can have meaning. Right.
So that became my focus. And so the book's called The Potentialist, or How Do You Reach Your Potential and Become Wise in Order to Make Better Decisions in a time where the decisions are going to be unprecedented and harder, and you can't count on the institutions to guide you. Right. And so that became the focus of the 3 books. 2 of them are out. The first one, Your Future in the New Reality of the Next 30 Years, describes the future in 7 things that are start of 7 solid steps that would be wise to take now, more important than ever. And then the second book is all about how do you actually reach your potential and become wise.
Yeah, and
the third book
given the amount of change that's going on in this space right now, I mean, I haven't read the book, I have to admit, but I am going to read it because I need these tools. I need to figure out how to, never mind maximize my potential, just survive and understand all the change. And so, give us a preview of the 7 things, or how can people? They should buy the book, and we'll put it in the show notes. But what are some quick things they can start to do today?
Yeah. So the 7 things are things that have always been a good idea, but now they're going to become crucial because the world we're going to live in is going to be very different. It's going to be much faster paced. We can already see it, and it's going to be much more complex. So
what about volatility? It feels like everything is changing very quickly.
Well, and volatility will also be true in our careers. Companies are going to come and go faster. Careers are going to come and go faster. Yeah. And so the first book concentrates on fundamentals that people have ignored in the past. You can't ignore anymore. Taking care of your body. You're going to live a lot longer, and you're going to have the opportunity to live a lot longer. But if you destroy it in the first 30 or 40 years of your life, it's going to be, and it is not clear how we're going to finance the chronically ill and the catastrophically ill in the future.
Yeah, I don't know. So we're going to bleed into healthcare. I don't know that the U.S. government is going to be able to finance it. We're just, I mean, whether we change our policy or not, even if people want to continue the course, it's going to be unsustainable.
Well, and the way to think of it at the highest level is that the demographic risk transfer that we've always depended on, lots of young people take care of fewer elderly, is evaporating. And so that's a big number. We got to figure out how to do that. I've got some ideas, trying to get those ideas forward to people in government. We'll see.
Okay, so step 1 is take care of yourself. Take care of your physical health, your mental health,
Same thing. you could be, the vast majority of people today are wildly underfunded to fund themselves in a longer life retired. And so number one, you got to have your health because you're going to need to work longer. You just count on it.
Yeah.
And number two is you're going to have to do a better job managing your money. And so those are basics, but then there's more. It's like thinking like an entrepreneur. The idea that I can go to work, I got this nice stable job, I can kind of go to sleep and do this repetitious job.
Right.
That's evaporating as fast as you can imagine it. So you have to start thinking like an entrepreneur. What could I do if I suddenly lost my job? How could I build a business, or how could I join an entrepreneurial business? What skills do they look for? Things like that.
Those days of joining IBM or joining Anthem or joining HCA are just not here anymore. The company's not going to take care of you like that. Yeah.
Right. It's going to be very different. And then the other one I'll mention, don't have time for all seven, but the other one I would mention, it's actually the chapter I'm proudest of in that book. It's chapter 11, which is success. And so what I'm proposing, is to particularly for younger people, redefine success. It is not fame, power, money, social status, appearance. All of those things are transitory, particularly over a longer life. And I will tell you from interviewing tons of people, nobody feels they're successful once they have those things. They're feeling something missing. So if it's not that, what is it?
But right, the ladder of success never stops, right? You make X number of dollars. That's fun for a week or a month, but then it loses it. Yeah.
Right. It's not anything that's wrong with these things, but they're not going to, when you put your head down on the pillow, you are not going to feel successful because you have that. Here's what does. Knowing in your heart every day, I did my best to be my best and left the world and the people I met along the way a little bit better than I found them. That's it.
That's fulfillment, impact, meaning, those kind of things.
Absolutely. Because first of all, you can't ask yourself and the world can't ask you any more than your best. And you'll know whether it's your best or not. You're the only person who will. And then if you're trying to live your life well, you're not sacrificing your life. That's part of it. You want to live a good life, but you do it in a way that you try to make the world and the people you meet along the way a little better. Then you'll feel very good.
Yeah.
And it's really a lot. It's very actionable. It's very measurable. And you can every day I start out that way and every day I go to bed that way.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Well, I will have the book in the show notes for people to order. I'm certainly reading it. I might listen to it. Now, how does that translate to where you see healthcare going? And then I want to talk about the ARC project next.
Right. Well, and by the way, I want to mention the second book just on one thing. Okay. One of the things, if you really look at the factors of success that medicine can't solve, but absolutely is as important as you taking care of your body to living a healthy life, particularly as you age, is relationships, having a sense of purpose, and wisdom, and a sense that my life matters. I don't care if you are very sick and you can't even get out of bed, your life still matters. And that's crucial. So that's a lot about what this second book tries to teach you early on, is that your life does matter and why, and then how do you live it to its own. So going back to healthcare, where I think and hope and I'm advocating that we go as a country is to first of all focus, which we are not focused on chronic and catastrophic disease. We have spread we have those cases in a variety of employer insurance plans. We've got it in Medicare, we've got it in Medicaid, we've got it in the veterans, and then it's divided up again by state, and then it's divided up again by local communities. And so as a result, we have no expertise that you would get by combining those cases and focusing some top companies on that problem by putting out an RFP. Here's what we want. And here's the way and that's so easy. We could do that in a heartbeat and finance those people separately. That then becomes a national catastrophic health plan with a very simple social contract.
And you maybe create incentives and the RFP is designed for certain metrics depending on what disease you're focused on.
Right. And what you've done then is you've created the laws of insurance. It is our healthcare, just like Social Security, is an insurance system, and that means you have to. One of the principles is you spread it over the largest population possible. So if you spread those costs over 330,000 people, 330 million people, and everybody pays a little bit because it won't be terribly costly.
Yeah.
Then focus the care. We'll reduce the cost, help people get better care, and guess what happens? Insurance costs on everybody else will fall 40 or 50%.
Right. Yeah, and you sort of align the efforts in the right place versus it being kind of spread around and fraction.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Every business, or everybody in their home, focuses on your biggest problem to make it go away. We're not focused on the biggest problem.
Right.
We are dabbling at it, and it is not focused, and that's how we'll fix it.
Well, and every CFO is every year frustrated with their Blues plan or whoever their ASO provider is, and it's the same conversation every November when they get the new rates.
Absolutely.
But there's not enough perspective. It's not pooled in the right way. Just like you're saying, it's not structured correctly. It's structured for healthcare need that we had in the 50s and 60s. That is not what we have today.
Right. A second big step that would be huge is to move, quite frankly, move away from government and employers defining our benefit plans and move from defined benefit to defined contribution, just like we did for pensions, because in this new environment, people are going to need that flexibility. Too many people are trapped right now because they got 3 kids and they can't afford to leave their healthcare plan. And what'll happen when that happens is you'll suddenly create a much bigger market for insurance. A lot of new insurers will come in the market. The government can be again a good regulator, and we need to build a national market. And we need a national market for providers. Why do I, if I change states, do I have to worry that what a nurse practitioner could do? It should be nationwide. The same thing's true on all of that. That'll make being able to make delivery systems much more flexible, able to deliver national solutions. So that's another.
So Ben, when we go to a defined contribution like that, how do you protect the chronically sick that maybe they have?
Remember, they're in a separate system.
Okay, so you're pulling them out. So
they're
pulling them out first. That makes sense.
Yeah, they're out.
Otherwise, you have all the young, healthy people not wanting to join a pool with folks.
And that's what we have. That's what we have today.
Yes,
that's what we have today. And we've fractured the risk pools to where they're so small, nobody can spread it would be the equivalent in property and casualty insurance if 50% of the houses that cost $5 million more burn down every day.
Yeah,
that's the problem. We have too many shock claims to distribute across this fractured system. And we can fix this. Both of those are big fixes. And of course, the fix I'm most excited about is AI, because the number one biggest problem, and I'll make sure your listeners know this, I know you personally know it, the number one biggest problem we have in healthcare right now, and this is one of those forces that came out of nowhere. It felt like, actually, it was, even though it'd been around for a long time, is we don't have enough clinicians to take care of the people. We cannot care for the elderly the way we do it today. We don't have enough clinicians. We don't have enough
at every level. I mean,
every level.
And surgeon, internist, nurse, home health, every level, that we don't have enough actual humans to deliver the care.
Right. And priority number one has to be, we have to radically increase the productivity. And I'm talking about 2 to 5 times the productivity of every clinical provider we have. and we need to accelerate the education and training of those people. And unfortunately, I'm not seeing much happening there because, the medical university medical centers are some of the slowest to change. And so I wish that would happen. So we have to really concentrate on the productivity. And I believe we can do that. I believe that is possible to achieve if we move fast enough on trying to really fundamentally change that transaction between patient and doctor, fundamentally change it so it's far more productive. And I think that's possible.
Well, so AI, you and I are both working with it a lot. I want to talk about our project in a minute, but it can be scary to employees in lots of industries because it's going to take away a lot of the duties where it gets automatically done.
Right.
But in healthcare, we have a shortage of people. And so there should be no fear if you're a healthcare worker listening to this podcast right now. We need you, and we need you to use AI because you have to treat 10 times more patients than you are now. And we want to treat them really well. We should give those patients AI. We need to give our clinicians AI.
Right.
And that's going to be needed in order to fulfill the duty we have to take care of all of our people. We're not going to lay off massive number of people in healthcare.
No, and as a matter of fact, I give a lot of speeches to CEOs, and I recommend to them, don't lay anybody off. Yeah. You're going to need every person that's a good employee. You're going to need every person you've got. And before you know it, you're going to be turning around and kicking yourself because you let some good people go. Right. Figure out a way to redeploy them because you're going to need them.
That empathy of like listening to a patient and helping them understand their diagnosis, helping them kind of modify the treatment protocols to fit their lifestyle and what they want to achieve. That is best done by a human, sort of augmented with AI tools.
Yeah, and that's what nobody that I know of is talking about replacing doctors with AI. They're talking about augmenting them. Right. Now, what do we mean augmenting? So, for example, today, we would like to assume all of our doctors know and practice the best medicine. The fact is they don't.
They can't.
And it's not because they don't want to, they can't. It's the
amount of research that comes out daily,
right?
No human can absorb all that. You just can't.
No, so some of the medical schools recently have said that a doctor would have to read 28 hours a day to stay current. Well, that's obviously can't happen. Right. But AI can read in seconds and totally get that and pass it on to the doctor at the right time. Same thing with the best practice. And so these are big ways that we can look at how can we accelerate that doctor. And then the other is on the other side, on the patients, doing more self-care, doing more self-detection. Yeah. If I get help through home testing and wearables and other things, maybe I can detect things quicker. And maybe I can have a better conversation with my doctor when I call them up.
Yeah. Ben, what do you think? I've been trying to use this analogy to help my doctor friends understand kind of how I see AI.
Right.
I'm self-confident, maybe my wife would say arrogant. I don't lack confidence, right? I think I'm a good driver. So driving my automobile, I think I'm really good. I don't always stay in the speed limit. And I believe I'm really high quality driver. I still use my anti-lock brakes, partially because you can't buy a car without them, but also because there's no way on a wet road coming through a light turning from green to yellow that I'm going to pump the brakes 1,000 times a second like my automatic anti-lock brake system does.
Sure.
And that doesn't mean I am admitting I'm not very good at driving. It just, the purpose is different. So this is what you're saying with reading all these published reports. That's not what the human doctor should be doing. Doesn't mean they're less good of a doctor. Just like I think I'm a great driver, but it's not my job to pump the brakes 1,000 times a second. Does that analogy fit with how you think about it?
Absolutely. And we have to remember we have a good model to see what happens. When for decades, pilots were the cowboys of the sky. Nobody told them what the hell to do, and nobody was going to tell them what the hell to do because they had a special skill and were anointed, to fly these airplanes. And then we learned as more flying became more popular that most of the problems, most of the crashes were pilot error. And so we still have pilots. There's still 2 pilots on every plane. But they have a computer now that helps them fly the plane. First of all, they have simulators to train them faster than ever before. I wish we had more of that in medicine, and that would train them faster. And then when something goes wrong, and things occasionally do go wrong with the AI, sometimes it's wrong, and so they're there. But that's a very different, and they still play an essential role in safety. So I don't think their jobs are diminished at all, and medicine certainly not.
It makes the job
and we don't have
more...
a choice. It's kind of an academic debate. Do we want to see people dying because they can't get to a doctor, dying because they can't get the treatment they need? No, we can't be that fussy about this right now. But we can about making sure it's augmentation, not replacement.
Now you have strong opinions about how to use AI, especially in medicine. I mean, generative AI is non-defined. Like it every time generates a new outcome, and there's lots of use cases for OpenAI and Gemini and Anthropic, these tools. But you taught me about bounded AI, which is a very different way to assemble an AI system. So maybe explain to the listener what the differences are and why in medicine it might be smarter to use a bounded system.
And they're growing very fast. So I had thought I was done founding companies, but I as I looked to the future, and this is years before ChatGPT came out, I felt like that probably big tech was going to be wedded to their business model that makes them a fortune, which is they take our information and data and they sell it.
And so social media, certainly that's the entire business model.
Right. And that what we were going to see was AI that was driven very much like an extremely smart search engine. But the problem, one of the great things about AI is it can handle massive amounts of data very fast because of the technology, as you know, and converts it to it converts your conversation to a mathematical formula and looks for matches. The downside is the more data you run it against, the greater the chance for error or inconsistent answers. And so that's the problem. I mean, these things are wonderful. ChatGPT, Grok, all of them, they're wonderful devices, but you do have to recognize that. And so I realized early on, what we need in education, in healthcare, and in a lot of other certain business applications, we have to have precision. It has to be accurate to the 99, more accurate than a human would be. And it has to be consistent. In many cases, we want it absolutely consistent. And so for those reasons, we came up with, we didn't have a name for it initially, but what ultimately became called bounded models, meaning we load the data, just the data we need. And that's what we look for from answers. And then we curate it to make sure it gives those answers and is precise. Now, we can still go against the internet, but it's under very controlled circumstances, very targeted, and we make sure we don't take any information out we don't want, and we don't bring anything in that we don't that could cause it to be incorrect. And so that's a bounded model. And OpenAI has recognized, and they've said this is a lot of the future of healthcare. I mean, the future of AI, because of the need for precision and consistency.
And is it a quantitative, qualitative difference? So, like, for instance, it's easiest to give an example with math, but in healthcare, there are lots of examples where there is a right answer, right? Like, 10 times 3 is 30. That should always be deterministically, factually true. And there are times in healthcare where if your A1C level is over X, we want to get it down. It's
Right.
harder to go to healthcare and find an exact analog like that. But there
Well,
are answers that we
I
want.
mean,
We want to always be the same answer, and it's not a judgment call. Those are factual. And then
yeah,
there are
like
some parts of healthcare that are research or
right.
that we're still learning.
Yeah, like I've had 104 fever for 6 hours. Should I go to the ER? Yes.
Yes, right. Yes, we don't need to.
You know,
It's not a
aspirin is not
right.
going to work, dude. So,
right.
but there are many of those. But there's also cases, and this is especially true in the case of best practices. You know, there is no one best practice for most of medicine.
Mhm.
There are different approaches that the specialty societies of the physicians will take. There's others that research will take. So, but there's a way to present.
But there are, you know, buildings full of differential diagnosis best practices that are very detailed, and a doctor can walk through that and will get to the same answer, even though there's lots of judgment calls along the way.
Right.
So
And AI can
putting
do
that
a lot.
into AI, yeah. So, but it would be in a bounded system. It's not like grabbing everything in the internet, because the internet also has, you know, things on Facebook with people just talking about, you know, I put some dirt on it and it fixed it, which is not, you know, maybe not that scientific.
Yeah, and so that's a great example of how you would take the legitimate sources that look at a different medical practice, and you'd create consensus outliers, or there's nothing written, because there's a lot of stuff there's nothing written on. And so for a doctor, that helps a lot. I can see the consensus, I can see the outlier, I can see the. So that's a perfect.
And so have you started to put this in place? Can this be done? How far along is it to be done?
Absolutely can be done. We're working, the company that I invested in, founded him. There are other investors, and I'm not the CEO. They are pursuing creating a complete revolution of how the doctor and the patient work together on a case, with the highest priority, because that's, you know, where we know where the biggest problem is in chronic and catastrophic disease, but also everyday things. And one of the other really important things for people to remember is that 70 to 80% of all chronic disease results from lifestyle. And so we'd like to tell ourselves, well, it's our genes, and it is for some, but there are lifestyle solutions, even for a lot of times when it's our genetic issues. There are lifestyle improvements. So that whole thing about
related to that is, I think, in addition, many of these 70% can be improved if you start changing your lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Can be improved, can be made less bad, can be reversed. So you start to have less bad chronic disease, or not have the same symptom levels. So it's hopeful. I think
every day. 50% of the people in the United States have high blood pressure, and the vast majority of it's unmanaged. Now there's one right there, but people don't know how. And but that's not rocket science to explain to them how to manage it either. So
it's like smoking cessation. I mean, you did this early on with smoking cessation.
Yep.
That's a behavior change. It's a hard addiction to work through.
Right.
But with coaching, with guidance, with support, with the proven procedures of how to help people through that process, you can have success. They can have success.
Yeah, and that's where we'll start. We'll start with the ones where there's huge problems, big numbers of people who suffer from it. There is behavior change that can fix it, and the combination of working with the doctor and the patient, we don't ever exclude the doctor, that we get those two working, so that when the doctor's not there, that patient's doing their part to help themselves get over this.
Yeah. Now, is it public? Can people go and check it out? You haven't said the name, but
this is still very much, and it's very much still something that but I would say this to the public: there are lots, and I mean in the hundreds of people working on this problem from different angles.
Yeah.
And so I'm very encouraged that we're going to start to see some miracles being done at the retail side, the retail of medicine, the retail of I'm a consumer or a patient, that's where we're going to see some big stuff being done. In addition to all the wonderful things that are happening with science, these are things that are going to develop in the next 3 or 4 years that are going to be huge. I believe now you combine that to what I said about how we should finance and structure healthcare. You can start to see how much more effective that could be, because you could deploy the right tool to the right person.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, so is it maybe summarize things? It's a kind of a scary time. Like my wife is scared. There's every time we turn the news, there's lots of one channel saying how great it's going to be, the other channel saying how terrible it is. But either way, it's scary. You've researched the future. You've launched lots of successful healthcare companies. I think you sound hopeful and optimistic. You feel good. Like it's a chaotic time, but there's hope. It's going to be good.
And first of all, one of the key aspects of wisdom is perspective, and you have to keep perspective here. We have to remember we live in a 24/7, 365 news cycle.
Yeah,
and they get paid to scare the living hell out of you.
Right.
That's what they do. And
in 1935, there was a lot of scary stuff going on, but we didn't have CNN and Fox and Twitter always telling people everything. Yeah.
Right. And throughout history, we didn't.
Yeah.
And, things were more dangerous then by a huge factor than they are today. And so, the number one thing that I speak to this right in every book, I speak to it in every speech I give, the worst thing you can do is let fear drive you. Fear causes you to make bad decisions. And pessimism causes you to walk right past the opportunities and not see them. Yeah. That's guaranteed. If you go back and study the other industrial revolutions, that's what divided the winners and the losers. The winners saw, oh, wait a minute, this could be good, and they weren't fearful. And so fear is overstated in our society, way overstated. And it's driven at us constantly, and it makes you pessimistic. And that's just not a healthy thing. It's not healthy for your body. It's not healthy for your mind. It's not healthy for your career or anything else.
Yeah.
And right now we need to be saying, and if you're fearful, you're going to spread that to the young people around you.
Right.
That's the worst thing in the world you can do. So I am definitely.
I agree completely. At the core, kind of where this entire discussion, which has been wonderful, we are in the challenge of facing chronic disease because our parents and grandparents really solved acute care, right? And solved, infectious disease, which were killing lots of people. So it's because of those great successes in the last 50, 100 years that now we have this opportunity we didn't live long enough to have heart disease, diabetes, kidney failure, because we were dying earlier. So it's a wonderful experience, but we have to sort of see it that way.
Well, and what I would, what the term that I use is pragmatic optimism. And pragmatic optimism, I'm not a rose-colored glasses guy.
Yeah.
My optimism is backed up by facts, and the fact that if you look at the arc of history, we've always gotten better. Always. We went through horrible times, absolutely horrible times, much worse than today. And every time we came out on the other side as an elevated society from where we had been, and we will do it again. There's no reason to believe we won't do it again. And if you really stand back, you'll see that people are better. So I tell people, I look at it this way: isn't it a fantastic time to be alive? The biggest transition in human history is occurring right now, and it'll occur over the next 2 or 3 decades. And we get to be part of it. And we not only get to be part of it, if you want to, you can shape it. And every day people say, well, how can I shape it? Talk to your family. Talk to your family, explain to them why division is simply a way for a new idea to be born. Tension between this, tension between that, new idea gets.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. And there was some of the greatest times of greatest tension produced the greatest changes. And so that's what we're about here.
And your book, The Potentialist, I think is sort of helping individuals and society achieve their potential or have the tools to achieve their potential.
Yeah. And we've achieved bigger things, bigger transitions, bigger elevations in the past. And this time is the time for wisdom, because we've really conquered information and knowledge. I mean, at our fingertips now, with all of these amazing AI tools and with what's
I have the entire human knowledge history in my phone on an AI model that would just give me an answer to everything.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't give me wisdom. It doesn't give me wisdom. It doesn't give me perspective. It doesn't give me sort of that understanding of where it fits.
Yeah. And it's very achievable. So I am truly a pragmatic optimist, and I would ask people, even if you can't get there, please don't say that kind of stuff in front of young people. They have to rebuild these institutions that have lost their way. They have to even democracy. It's got to be a more accountable form of representative democracy than it is today. And we need those young people to be optimistic, to see that these things can be done. And the people they listen to are their grandparents and their parents, and their aunts and uncles. So we all have that responsibility.
Yeah. Well, Ben, thanks for sharing this. It's been an incredible career, and you have more to go. So I'm excited to hear about the new company. We'll put a link in the show notes to the book. And really, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been so fun. You're a very sharp guy, and you understand innovation. It's fun to be with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
And then when you have the new models out, we'll have you come back.
We'll bring them out, and we'll demonstrate our doctor and our patient and people. I think will get a kick out of it.
Okay. Excellent.